This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Samsung ATIV 500T Windows tablet. This is a Windows 8 tablet. It's running on an ATIV CPU, so that means it's x86 compatible. That means you can run your Windows 7 apps on this. At 1.7 to 1.8 pounds, it's pretty light, it's pretty thin. It actually looks a lot like a Samsung Galaxy Tab 2. Very glossy back here. But it does more than the MS Surface RT, so that can make it more useful. But it's still not quite as capable as full Intel Core i5 and i7 tablets. We're going to look at it now and learn the difference. So this is the Samsung ATIV 500T Windows 8 tablet. This runs on an Intel Atom CPU. There's also a ATIV 700T, and that runs on an Intel Core i5 CPU, and that costs about $400 more or so. So this is priced in between your Core i5 Windows 8 tablets that are on the market and the MS Surface RT, and also the ASUS Windows RT tablet, which runs on an ARM CPU and doesn't run Windows 7 applications. And that's the best way to look at this guy, as a tweener, and we're going to discover what that means now. First off, for a Windows tablet, it's actually pretty easy to hold. It weighs 1.7 pounds, so a little bit heavier certainly than your iPad at 1.5 pounds, or the Surface RT also coming in at about 1.5 pounds, but not so much heavier either. Now the Surface Pro, which is going to be a Core i5, and the Samsung 700T, those are going to weigh 2 pounds. So again, right in between there, but still pretty manageable. It has a 11.6-inch display, relatively rectangular in its form factor. In fact, this is a little bit longer than the Samsung Series 7 Slate from last year, and we'll compare that in a bit. If you look at it from the side, very thin, very plasticky. This is a Samsung product of the more affordable range, and they've made it look pretty much like the Samsung Galaxy Tab 2 10.1, only, well, it's 11.6 inches, but what you have here is Samsung's beloved ultra glossy plastic back here, finished in a kind of silvery gray look. Not too bad looking, but the thing is so glossy and so slippery that it even wiggles across the desk. If you just touch it a little bit, they go like a wet bar of soap, so be careful of that. Feels pretty solid, doesn't creak, there's not too much flexing going on if you press on it. And one of the neat things here on the bottom is the S Pen. Just like the Galaxy Note 10.1 tablet and Samsung Galaxy Note smartphones, we have a Wacom dual digitizer in here. That means it does capacitive multi-touch, and it works with this Wacom Active Pen with 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity. Now, just to make things more confusing, I hear that you folks in Canada get a different model that does not have the pen in the active digitizer. So if you're in Canada, you won't get this feature. Also, if you get the AT&T version of this tablet, AT&T is selling this with 4G LTE, which is lovely to have. For some reason, they axed the digitizer on that too. So no pen, no active digitizer, just touchscreen. The tablet has an 8-megapixel camera on the back. That's better than average. Usually we see 3 or 5-megapixel cameras, and it does take pretty decent photos and video. Nice to have. Works with Skype as well. There's also a front video chat camera. You have your LED flash right here. And as we take a look around, lots of ports and buttons going on. We have our power button here with a little blue LED that lets you know it's turned on. Here's our combo mic headphone jack. We have a rotation lock button. We have our single USB 2.0 port. Sorry, not 3.0. That's a little bit of a bummer, but that's right there. Standard USB port. And that way this behaves just like a PC. Anything you can plug into a normal Windows PC you can use here. Keyboards, mice, USB modems, all of those will work. Under this door here we have a micro SD card slot compatible with SDXC cards, so you can go up to 64 gigs. And there's a little door here, but you can't really lift that up. That's where the SIM card slot would be if this was a 3G model. Nothing on the side here. As we look at the edge, there's stereo speakers facing towards the front. Not as big as the Tab 2 stereo speakers, but still a good placement to have them in the front. It's fairly loud as a result. Bottom here we have a dock connector. This is electromagnetic style, not a mechanical kind of port, and that's for the optional keyboard dock. Now, it's a lot like the ASUS Transformer keyboards insofar as you dock it in here, you've got 2 locator plugs in here, you can pull these out, and it docks in there, but there is no extra battery in the keyboard dock. Now, the keyboard dock, you can get that as a bundle with this guy or buy it separately. If you buy it separately, it's about $129. And that is our little charging port, and this comes with a compact charger, lots of cord on it like a PC charger would have, but a very compact brick. And as we look at the front here, there's a 2-megapixel camera up front. We have ambient light sensors on this. It can auto adjust screen brightness. If you don't want it to do that, you can turn that feature off. And we have our hardware Windows home button, which takes us back to this live tile interface here. That's standard on all Windows 8 computers. They always have a little home or Windows button that brings you right back to your start screen, as it's called, in the modern UI with tiles. Because this is a full Windows computer, again, it's running on an Intel Atom CPU that is x86 compatible. We have your standard desktop here, which you'll get even with RT, but we can install all sorts of Windows programs. Like you can see we have PC benchmarking applications here. Those do not run on RT, on ARM CPUs. And I've installed Corel Painter 12 and Photoshop and a couple of other applications. So all those are a go here. With 64 gigs of internal storage and that Intel Atom Clover Trail 1.8 gigahertz CPU, this costs $649. If you want to add the keyboard dock, you're looking at almost $800, so it's going to be a kind of pricey proposition. Though some places may have the bundle available that has both the keyboard and the dock for $750. And this gets to the tweener status here. If you're liking the MS Surface a lot, the features, the portability, the long battery life, the quiet operation, but you really need to run your EXE applications, your Windows 7 programs, then certainly for just about the same price or a little bit more, this is pretty attractive. Because you look at a 64 gig MS Surface RT tablet, which comes bundled with a touch keyboard on it, you're looking at $700 right there. So we're already in the same ballpark, and this obviously can do some more stuff. Now if you're comparing this to tablets that have a Core i5, like Samsung's own ATIV 700T, Sony Vaio Duo 11, a variety of convertible form factors. There aren't too many pure slates out there, but that's where you could say, well, if I'm going to spend almost $800 and then I move up to say $1,100, I get a much more powerful computer. Now for those on a budget, well, you still might say saving my $300 or $400 is very important, but otherwise, if you're looking to use this as your main machine, you definitely want something with a Core i5 in it. The Atom gets bogged down pretty easily, and also this has only 2 gigs of RAM. It's not upgradable, so a lot of multitasking is kind of rough. So for those of you who want something a little more capable than Surface as your mobile product to carry around, great. For somebody who wants to use this as their main computer, say you art students who are in art school, or you art professionals who are looking to do lots of serious artwork on this and drawing and that kind of thing, I would suggest a more powerful computer. Just spend $300 or $400 more and save up if you can. It'll be worth it. Inside the Atom CPU is the Z2760, again 1.8 gigahertz, that's a 32-bit CPU. You get 2 gigs of DDR2 RAM and 64 gigs of flash storage, basically an SSD inside. This does not have Intel HD 4000 graphics by any means like a Core i would have. Instead you get Intel SGX 545 graphics, and it's about 1/5 of the speed of Intel HD 4000 graphics. You obviously have your stereo speakers here. We have dual band Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.0, so it's a fairly capable computer when it comes to those kind of features. And again, that's single USB 2.0 port. This is a 1366 by 768 display here for this kind of money, and for actually the horsepower of the Atom CPU and the graphics GPU it has, you're not going to get a full HD 1080p display. That said, Samsung makes a pretty nice PLS display, and it's 400 nits of brightness, and it's nice and sharp. You're not going to get the razor sharp text that you're going to get, say, on a full HD display, but it's very readable. We'll take a look at a web page here. We're running regular IE10 in desktop mode, which means this is the same IE10 that you'll have on any kind of PC. Dolby Flash, all that you get in both the live tile version and on this one. Well, you can install all your plugins and stuff. And text is plenty clear. Of course, these are fairly big headlines, so let's click through and look at an article. Pretty easy to read, definitely, even if you zoom it out. So, not a bad display. I'm not going to complain about that. Not as elegant as Full HD, but then again, this is also more affordable. Bright, colorful. Because it's a Samsung, they love to have the different color modes, so you can actually switch between movie mode, vivid mode, normal mode, which we're using right now, so you can tweak the colors a little bit basically and the display warmth to suit those. Now for day-to-day just navigating the UI, it feels pretty fast. This is just fine. You really can't tell the difference between this and a Core i5 just when you're flying around here. When you do notice the difference is when you start running several applications at once. Even if you're just launching some applications. When I launched Corel Painter 12 on this, even though it's coming off a flash drive, it should be fast, it actually has to take a while. It thinks about it. And my palettes, my tool strip gets drawn kind of like one by one sometimes, whereas that's not going to happen on a Intel Core i5 machine. Surface we can't compare because, well, it doesn't run those Intel applications, but for these apps right here, I would say that they run equally as quickly, which is to say fast. even graphically heavy applications like the built-in news application here. Also depends a little bit on your internet connection. We have a fast internet connection here, so that shouldn't be a problem. That loads pretty quickly. And if we want to take a look at an article, it takes a little bit longer to render here, but it's still quite bearable and pleasant, and not so different from Surface RT in that respect. So it behaves pretty well. And if we look at IE10 here in the modern UI mode, which is the full screen mode, you're going to get pretty much the same experience that you do on the desktop visually, but it's full screen now. We'll check out our website so you can see how a fairly heavy desktop site loads. One thing that's really strange, and I suspect this might be a Microsoft issue, is this guy does not have a keyboard attached, obviously, and I have not paired a Bluetooth keyboard with it, though of course you can, or use a USB keyboard. But you type in a text field and the on-screen keyboard should just pop up automatically, so you don't have to keep hitting the little keyboard down in the bottom corner. It doesn't always do that. But in the convertible tablets we have that do have hardware keyboards, where the on-screen should never pop up, then it always comes up. Kind of weird. So once again, this is pretty responsive. Now if we get 5 tabs going, it might start to bog down a little bit, especially if we have other apps running. So let's launch a couple more tabs. And you do that by hitting the plus sign, and then let's load, say, CNN next. Alright, so we've got a bunch of graphically rich sites running here. We have our own homepage, we have CNN, we have New York Times, and we have Samsung's. And let's just hop between them, and it's doing just fine. And now we'll go back to our own site. We're going to play a video review of the HTC 8X Windows Phone. And again, you can see the pages take a bit longer to load than they would perhaps on your faster Ultrabooks or Core i5 tablets, but we're still getting the job done. And that is using Adobe Flash. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Today we're going to look at... now we're going to launch Corel Painter 12 in desktop mode. So we've got Corel Painter all loaded up right now, 1600 by 900 at 150 dpi. We got our menus here. Fairly responsive once it's open and running. And so we've got our pencil tool, so you can see pressure sensitivity. By the way, this has the hover. You can see the little dot hovering here. That's just how it works. So a very light line, barely, and then a very heavy line. And we're going to switch to a different tool so that it becomes more apparent. So here we can see the pressure sensitivity. As I press harder, the line gets a little fatter, and I can do a very faint light line like that, and then get harder. And it has good palm rejection, leaning my hand on the glass right here. So that works just fine. And it's keeping up pretty well. And if we do the usual torture circle test here, it's following without any lag. So, not bad. And now we're in Sketchbook Pro, popular tool. And once again, the pressure sensitivity is actually better here than it is in Corel Painter. It's very obvious and very responsive. And typical of Wacom, pretty smooth, silky drawing experience. Works nicely. Keeps up with my strokes pretty well, even when I do some rapid hair over here. A little bit of lag when you start getting really fast, but pretty usable. And how about for you note takers? Maybe you're not so much of an artist, but you need to take notes in class, or you're just using Windows Journal, which is included with all Windows PCs. And you can see I've got some of my left-handed scrawl here, writing out some poetry, and I'm going to add to that. It's pretty responsive. It's keeping up. If we want to do some recognition, granted that's pretty hideous handwriting, but we're going to give it a try. thinking a little bit long there compared to most Windows PCs running on faster AMD or Intel CPUs. And there's its guesses. Now, one thing about the slower CPU that can actually reduce recognition quality, and I have seen it do better than this, but this is not too bad. So certainly a good note-taking tool, and the fact that it's 1.7 pounds means you can actually hold this and write on it without feeling like you're dying after a half an hour. And for those of you who are familiar with the Samsung Galaxy Note products, we have S Note here. The funny thing about S Note here is it's actually not as snappy and as responsive as it is on the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 Android tablet. It gives us a little clue here as to how to use it. We'll just open up some random sketchbook that I created. It takes a while to load these things too. So here we have some very primitive drawings, and we can switch over to text mode right here, and I can start writing. So we've got tools for drawing here, and if you tap on that, you can pick your color and pick from a couple of different tools. You can do things like insert pictures. If you tap over here, you can take a picture with the camera and embed it. Insert pictures on the clipboard, images that you have on your hard drive, clip art, all that kind of stuff right there. And you can even put in voice notes right there. You've got the little microphone symbol. If you want to do text input, just start writing on here. And here's your little tools to do carriage returns and all that kind of thing, because S Note handles that a little bit peculiarly. And we're actually going to make a clean canvas here so you can see what that looks like. And now I'm going to write that again in handwriting mode. It's going to take a little bit to recognize it, and there it does it, and it just inserts it wherever. Not too much control over that part, but gets the job done. So that's S Note. And also we have a little floating S Note Mini, which is really more designed for the desktop. So we're going to show you from the desktop. And this is a handy little notepad that you have anywhere, and you got the same drawing option over here. And if you choose text mode, it uses the big on-screen keyboard for Windows, and then we have an eraser. And we can erase our smiley face, and then you can save the note. So that's kind of a handy pop-up feature. Other Samsung applications include a whole bunch of utilities that once you update them also end up on your desktop as icons. We've got Samsung Support Center, which just basically looks at the overall PC health and includes updating features as well. Software update, which handles updating too. And we've got a couple of other utilities that are on the desktop here. Once you start updating this guy, you get all sorts of little icons on the desktop, which you can clean up if you want. Now, one thing out of the box, if you get this, do run that Samsung software update, because we got about 10 updates pushed to us for the various applications and a firmware update that really improved the behavior of this and made it much more stable and predictable. Samsung includes their S Player, which is their own video player. You can use the one that's built into Windows in the live tile interface. The Xbox music and video players are there, or you can use Windows Media Player when you're in desktop mode as well. So we're going to look at our sample videos here that we have loaded, and we've got a 720p video and a 1080p video. We're going to try out the 1080p just to see how it does. And now we're at about 75% volume. Not too bad for a tablet. And it's handling video playback.
What do we do?
Pretty well. We've got some frame drops going on though.
We get ready.
But not too bad, and well, 1080p is actually higher than the screen resolution. But definitely some frame drops. Now if we drop down to 720p, things should be perfectly smooth. And that indeed is smoother. Now we've done a bunch of Windows 8 product reviews, so we're not going to go over every feature, but in addition to being able to install your standard Windows 7 applications, you do get the Microsoft Store here. And these are applications that, generally speaking, are going to be live tile, modern UI apps rather than desktop apps. And there's a good selection growing there already, but since this can do regular EXEs, you're probably going to be focusing more on that. But we have downloaded a couple of live tile games, so you can see we've got Evernote here that actually came pre-installed, some useful stuff. Netflix, you can run it in this UI if you want, or you can just run it in a web browser in desktop mode as well. So now we're in Soulcraft. 3D environment, obviously a lot more demanding. And that's working just fine. So that's a little modern UI gaming, and these are apps that came from the Microsoft App Store. Now in terms of performance, again, we're still looking at Intel Atom Clover Trail here. So here's our Windows Experience Index now in a scale of 1.0 to 9.9. You can see that our processor got a 3.5, our RAM got a 4.6, graphics for desktop performance 3.6, gaming graphics, 3D graphics 3.2, and the flash drive got a 5.8 rather, which is a little slow for flash storage, so not the fastest there. Probably the controller itself is the reason why. And on PC Mark 07, it scored 1274. 1274 is not too great if you compare it to Core i5s, which again, you know, you're going to spend a lot more money to get that Core i5, and maybe you don't need that kind of power, but typically we see in the upper 4000s for something with a Core i5 and an SSD drive. But the good point here is battery life. This is passive cooling. Passive cooling means there is no fan. That is just like your Android tablet or an iPad. So no fan running means a lot less power consumption, absolutely quiet, and it doesn't get terribly hot to the touch. And battery life is very good. Battery life is as good as a mobile OS tablet, as Android or the iPad, or the MS Surface RT for that matter. And we've been seeing up to like 9 hours with the brightness set pretty aggressively at about 60%, which is pretty bright given how bright the display is. So it's quiet, it has battery life that's every bit as good as an iPad, just about right here, and hey, so that's the advantage of the Atom. So that's the Samsung ATIV 500T tablet. It's available now, and it's I would call it a tweener tablet. If you need something that does more than Surface RT, and you don't really want to spend the money on a Core i5 or deal with things like a fan and lower battery life, it certainly has its good points. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.